Welcome to the Western Museum of Flight. I'm Cindy Maka, the director. There are a lot of jokes within aviation communities about doctors and flying. None of those apply to today's speaker. He's a doctor who really can fly, and boy, can he fly. A fully qualified test pilot who is also a medical doctor, specialty trained in aerospace and survival medicine, we can say with confidence that we have an extremely rare birdman here. It is thus my privilege to introduce Dr. Sam Puma, MD, who will describe his work with the Advanced Tactical Fighter Pressure Suit.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sam Puma. I am a retired Air Force flight surgeon and test pilot, and I was brought on to Northrop Grumman to help advance to do the R&D on the Northrop Advanced Fighter Crew Protection System. This was a parallel development that was developed at the same time as the YF-23 that Northrop Grumman was doing as the Advanced Tactical Fighter. The suit itself is what we're going to talk about today, but we call it a crew protection system because there are other portions of the suit that support it, i.e. all kind of valves and hoses and connections to the aircraft, including communication. I came on board with Northrop Grumman in 1985, and then we continued the suit until the decision on the YF-23. The Advanced Fighter Crew Protection Suit that we are going to discuss in more detail is a single item that can replace 5 other pieces of equipment, suits, that a pilot might wear in accomplishing the mission of a YF-23. First thing that we're going to cover is a normal flight suit like I'm wearing here. And the purpose of a flight suit that most crew members wear is that's their work coverall. It's the item that keeps them from getting abrasions, it keeps them from getting too cool or too hot. It's a cover like anybody might wear a suit or might wear coveralls. It also protects them from abrasion from G-suits, parachute harnesses, and it serves as a mount for the oxygen. As you can see on the lower right of the brochure, the pilot is wearing most of the items I talked about: parachute harness, a helmet, the mounting for the oxygen. He's wearing an anti-G suit over the coveralls and then wearing a pair of boots. Now the flight suit with its function is something that the pilot must wear if he's going to fly any airplane, let alone the YF-23. In addition to that, we have another functional item that the pilot might have to wear just about all the time that he's flying in, and it's coupled to the capabilities of the YF-23, and that's the Pressure Jerkin and anti-G suit that's in the middle on the left side of this brochure. The Pressure Jerkin can provide several functions, and it goes back to the early 1930s and was developed because they started to see that pilots were winding up getting into G-induced loss of consciousness. They were not able to fight as well as some of the others, and they provided good G protection. Relaxed G capability of the crew members is, and actually the normal human being, is between 3 and 5 Gs. An anti-G suit, as is being worn with this Pressure Jerkin, gives another additional 1 G. Now, the pilots can increase their tolerance level to the Gs by another 3 Gs approximately, and I will demonstrate a little bit of what an anti-G straining maneuver consists. And my face might get a little red from this, but it's because we are actually tensing every muscle, and including the abdominal muscles, and slowly letting air pressure out of the chest area to keep the blood from pooling in our extremities and the abdomen. And I will do that maneuver now. It's called the anti-G straining maneuver, and it goes something like this. Now, all the time a pilot is doing this, he's fighting and flying the airplane against an opponent. This is fatiguing over the long period of time. The other function that occurs now, and I'm going to talk about 3 more flight suits that are used. Oh, and let me get back, there's one more item I want to mention about the Jerkin. Later on, it became used as a pressure garment to go to high altitude because the pressurization of the cockpits was not too good, especially when they first started doing that. The British were about the first to use it, and it was called the Pressure Jerkin. And a jerkin itself goes back to medieval times when it was a tight-fitting vest type of garment, and that's where the term came, and the Brits then came along and called this a pressure jerkin because it's putting counter pressure to the chest and pressure into the lungs that helps to give a greater G protection. And the jerkin was used for high altitude in addition to an anti-G suit, which brings us then to the next function that the Northrop Advanced Fighter Crew Protection Suit has to accomplish, and that's the pressure suit, and that's down at the lower left of the brochure. And a pressure suit, as used by high altitude reconnaissance aircraft, does not have any G capability with it. It's just strictly a pressure vessel. It's an impermeable vessel that is around the pilot's body, and it protects him to very high altitudes. The initial pressure suits were called a partial pressure suit. And these pressure suits had a jerkin type of capability for the head and chest, but then had a capstan type of suit of tubes, rubber tubes that went down the extremities and down the torso, and these had straps that went around these tubes so that as the tubes expanded, they tightened against the crew members' arms, legs, and torso. The current pressure suit that it's being used is a complete vessel all unto its own. Now let's go and talk about another function in a different kind of suit. It's on the upper left of the brochure, the anti-exposure suit. The anti-exposure suit was disaffectionately called the poopy suit. And the reason some people say that it got that name is because once you're in it, you don't go. And I'm not sure that that's actually the actual origin of being called the poopy suit, but that's what it is. It was dominantly used for cold water immersion, and it is totally impervious, and it gives maybe up to 15 minutes to 20 minutes in the most frigid water that it might be used in. The final suit that this replaces is very similar to the anti-exposure suit, and that's a Chem Biosuit. Now, the Chem Biosuit is also impermeable, and it's also made of materials that a chemical agent or a biological agent won't be able to penetrate or damage the suit. Now let's go back to the center of the brochure that depicts the Northrop Advanced Fighter Crew Protection Suit. And we'll talk about the suit itself. It is a hybrid suit in that the head and neck are full pressure like a regular standard pressure suit, but the rest of the suit is a partial pressure suit, but instead of having capstan tubes that tighten fabric, there are bladders that are included inside the suit that cover the hands, the feet, the legs, the arms, the torso, and the chest area. And the chest area, it gives us the pressure jerkin capability in addition to all of the rest of the blood that comes back to the heart. And I want to mention something about the reason why we have to have all these bladders, like the bladders down in the legs and the abdomen and the chest, and the pressure to the jerkin capability from the this connector here that goes to the helmet, as you can see on the brochure. The heart itself is not a suction pump. The heart cannot draw blood into it from any part of the body. It must come back to the body under pressure. Now that's not too bad from the head and neck and upper chest, but from the rest of the body, especially when you're pulling G's in when you're in turning dogfight or aerial combat maneuvers, you must have a way of returning the blood to the heart. And that's the reason for the bladders and the anti-G suits in earlier equipment. Now, once the blood gets back to the heart with some pressure, it gets into the right side of the heart, it's pumped through the lungs, where the pressure jerkin squeezes it back out and forces oxygen into the bloodstream, and then gets over into the left side of the heart, where it then goes to the various parts of the body. Okay, the way this suit gives a full pressure capability to the head and neck is because it has an interface that links to the helmet, goes under the flight suit garment itself, and then forms a seal around the neck. That gives the head and neck a full pressure capability. In addition to that, within the helmet, we have a mask. And the mask gives us the capability of the jerkin capability that gives about an extra G. And we are able to then pressurize the chest with this same mechanism where this goes to the chest bladders and the hose goes up to the mask, as you can see, up to the back of the helmet and to the mask through the helmet. The bladders in the suit are fed by a variety of hoses and are controlled by a valve that is proportional to the amount of G's that are experienced by the pilot when he's fighting. Now let's talk a little bit about the testing that we did to show that this suit, after development, could perform against the requirements, the performance requirements that came from the capabilities of the YF-23. The first thing we're going to talk about is the coverall, or the standard flight suit that pilots or aircrew members wear. This was important because it must be compatible with the aircraft that we have either on the line right now or like the YF-23 that may be coming on in the future. We tested it in the T-38, we tested it in the FA-18, we tested it in the F-14, and we tested it in the F-20 cockpit mock-up that Northrop had on. And the suit met all the requirements that a flight crew member might have to perform in the cockpit without impeding him or his tasks or his duties. The next thing that we tested, and this is the most important thing because of the capabilities of the YF-23 for very high G flight, the requirement was that we do 9 G per second up to 10 Gs and sustain the 9 Gs or 10 Gs for at least 45 seconds. During the test, and I believe we have video that you might be able to see, we were able to get to 10 Gs, and you'll notice that the test pilot, Dennis, or the test subject, Dennis was an operational fighter pilot who came on board Northrop to give the operational experience during the test and evaluation of the YF-23 and the pressure suit, the advanced fighter crew protection suit. Dennis first did the G-forces that were gradually up to 10 Gs, doing his straining maneuvers, and you can tell on the video that he was just absolutely wiped out by the time he got up to 9 Gs. We then did him, and I think you'll be able to see that on the video too, wearing the Advanced Fighter Crew Protection Suit. And the difference was absolutely staggering. He was almost nonchalant about pulling the 10 Gs without any problem. And then one of the Northrop Grumman test pilots, Roy Martin, who I believe is a docent here at the museum, he participated, and that's on the video, in what we call the SACM, or Simulated Air Combat Maneuver. This comprised 10 minutes of 5 to 7 to 5 to 7 to 5 to 7 Gs until the 10 minutes were over with, simulating a combat maneuver. At the end of this, Roy's only comment was, couldn't we stay at 7 all the time because it was easier? That's a fantastic testimony for the suit. The next things that we're going to talk about now are only essential for the suit to protect the pilot in the event of the case. Let's just take, for instance, the pressure suit. The only reason the pressure suit is required is if the cabin pressurization malfunctions in the airframe, or battle damage causes the loss of pressurization. The suit then is essential for get-me-down capability, and the necessity for this was about 1 minute from 70,000 feet down to 55,000 feet. Now, if the pilot could continue the mission, the suit had to meet the requirement for 55,000 feet for 30 minutes to complete the mission. The testing in this suit, and I personally did the testing, we did it in an altitude chamber, and the altitude chamber was not used to going to such high altitudes. And there are tremendously huge pumps that are used to pump all the air out of the altitude chambers as they're going down. And they have a storage vessel that they pump down in advance, and then they open these big valves that give you a rapid decompression within the altitude chamber. And I believe you can see that on the video, but we did a slow ascent to 70,000 feet in the suit without any problem. And then on another day, we did a rapid decompression, and we were only able to get up to 68,000. We wanted to try for 70, but the altitude chamber just couldn't meet it. And then from there, we did a slow ascent to 95,000 feet. That's impressive for this suit. It far exceeded the altitude requirements for a pressure suit. The next thing that was done is the testing for anti-exposure. The suit, since it's impermeable and has to be with all these bladders in it, was really great in the water. It gave good anti-exposure protection because there was a space filled by the air within the bladders between the exterior of the suit and the pilot's undergarments, long johns. Usually you wear long johns under the suit so that there's no chafing and for wicking and keeping any perspiration in the area. And that brings me back to one additional thing. One of the bladders that I didn't talk about, they're not really bladders, but there are two pads in the suit that cover the chest area that are fed by air-conditioned air to keep the pilot's thermal requirements, to keep him comfortable within the suit and to evaporate any perspiration that comes in the suit. Now, the other thing that we did with the anti-exposure at Naval Air Development Center in Warminster, Pennsylvania, We went into their dunk chamber where I personally jumped off a board into the water, and then they simulated me being dragged by a parachute. I turned over on my back like you're dutifully supposed to, and then we simulated my being rescued by a helicopter. And you can see that on the accompanying video. The final thing that we want to talk about on the suit is the chemical biological suit. And because of the anti-exposure capability where it's totally impermeable, and the chemical agents and biological agents, the only thing that had to be done with respect to make it capable, to give it the capability, was to assure that any of the materials would not be deteriorated or broken down by either the chemical or biological agents or their carriers. And with respect to that, we can now, and I want to say that the suit passed every test that we exposed it to and did really great. I want to acknowledge some people that were instrumental in developing this suit. It was a fantastic R&D effort. I came on after the project had already been started. Ed Drumhiller was an engineer who was working on it before I took it over. And then the guy who made everything work was Brian Laufer. He was the life support technician that kept all the flying equipment for Northrop Grumman and the pilots in good operating condition. And you can see Brian on some of the videos suiting me up in the suit. And finally, our partner in developing this suit, who won the contract actually, was ILC Dover and in Delaware, and the representative there who worked tirelessly and really very hard with us was a guy by the name of John Damron. With that, I'm going to close, and I thank you for your attention. Stay safe. Have a great day.